All right, we're now joined via Zoom by Marc Lubner. He is the CEO of Afrika Tikkun Group. He'll be speaking to us about the South Africa's unity and cohesion as we observe Reconciliation Day in the country. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Lubner. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nati. Thank you for having me.
All right, now, can we really talk about reconciliation in this country when we know that what is at the center of deep divisions in the country emanate from a lack of repatriation and, to a certain extent, justice, given our colonial and apartheid past?
Well, Nati, I'm not quoting from Minister Mthethwa's comment, which was that this is in fact a day of reconciliation where we should embrace the common ties that bind us as a human race rather than focus on that which seeks to divide. We can review our pasts in many different ways. Life is all about perceptions, and I'm certain that we all have different perceptions about a history in this country. There's no doubt apartheid divided us, and that in itself made it evil for a number of other reasons, including just the brutality with which it was enforced. So my suggestion is that if we stay focused on the past, we get more of the past. If we, however, choose to focus, Day of Reconciliation, on what we actually have today and what we could have tomorrow, we embark on a completely different journey with an outcome that is going to benefit each and every single one of us. One should not forget necessarily the crimes of the past. That's not what I'm suggesting for a second. But what I am suggesting is that it is only by focusing on what we want tomorrow that we already find ourselves halfway there, because the vision in our mind is where we want to be. South Africans are amazing human beings. We are resilient in so many ways, and yet one of the things I think that binds us, that doesn't appear as an asset on any balance sheet, is this incredible sense of ubuntu, which those of us who live in this country experience each and every single day. We've got to focus on that. We've got to build around that ubuntu.
Now, I hear what you are saying and, referencing the minister as well, Minister Mthethwa. But is the country in the form of its leaders and its citizens united in the ideals that embody this day? I mean, particularly given that we are one of the most unequal countries in the world, are we united in the belief that, there is actually reconciliation in this country?
Where the Gini coefficient between rich and poor is certainly one of the most divided anywhere in the world. But honestly, I do defy people who turn around and say we South Africans are that far apart. We're conscious beings, whether that was through an awakening post-apartheid, whether it was through individuals like Madiba. And I believe that South Africans have a greater depth of understanding of its people than most other nations of the world. And when I look at, and you suggest for argument's sake, we should look to leaders and differentiate leaders from common day folk. My suggestion is not. My suggestion is to say we're all South Africans. We all can close this divide between rich and poor. We should not sit and wait for leaders, political leaders in particular, to do that for us, when there's so many social leaders, community leaders that need to be bolstered and supported. The everyday man and woman has the ability to make a difference. And if we do that, I honestly do believe government forces, government powers, authorities will necessarily back the changes that we as a nation necessarily want to see. It's time to stop waiting for others to do it for us and to, frankly speaking, commit ourselves and get off our rear ends and start to just make the difference ourselves. We know what the right thing is to do, and if we do that, each and every one of us in our own way, we will allow pathways for government and political leaders to follow.
Mr. Lubner, what is the right way that you speak of? I mean, your organization particularly focus on unity and cohesion, in this country. But when you start to talk about the past, you talk about deep hurt and deep trauma, and we know in order for you to move on, you need to address that before you can start talking about cohesion and unity. And so what are the practical steps then that South Africans can take now, given the fact that we didn't really deal with the trauma in this country, particularly the way that it was needed to be dealt with in, during those times. I mean, a lot of people now are talking about justice has not been served.
Natia, I asked the question, is justice going to be served through imposing punishment and penalty? Or is justice better served by people holding hands and walking forward into the future, working collaboratively together to do good, to make life different for those who are, we're 25 years post-apartheid. We really do need to necessarily say that and by the way, the remnants of apartheid are still very apparent. Certainly in the circles in which I work and in the townships of South Africa, you can see the result still today significantly of the social divide, the poverty divide that apartheid inflicted upon us all. And we're all paying the price for that. My suggestion, though, is that we can best pay the penalty for the sins of the past by committing ourselves to walking arm in arm, brothers and sisters together, to bring about a better tomorrow for us all. And it comes about through sharing educational resources, food security resources, just caring. I saw an outpouring by South Africans during the first wave of the lockdown, where people literally got into their cars, they drove through to poor communities, just shared food resources. Post the riots, people came out of their homes to help clean up and commiserate with both sides, as it were, those who felt this need to express their anger and those equally who suffered loss. And so I suggest that we will waste an enormous amount of time, and I use the word waste in inverted commas, not disrespectfully. If all we do is say we're going to take X number of years to review history and review the past, by all means we have to do it, but at the same time we have to be active, and we've got to do something to make sure that tomorrow is better than it is today. And the only way I therefore know how to bring about reconciliation is through honest effort, sincerity, and what we've termed in Afrika Tikkun responsible kindness.
And you talk about, South Africans, the citizens themselves bringing about this change. Now, you've given this example, this beautiful example about what happened and how South Africans galvanized during, the lockdown, particularly the hard lockdown. But then recently we saw the unrest in July in KZN and in Gauteng, and in KZN, that huge racial incident that left several people dead in Phoenix. And that was squarely at the feet of a racist incident that we were told, is what caused it there. I mean, our previous story of the Northwest mother who's still seeking for justice because her child was killed and no one has been arrested. And again, they're talking about black versus white, etc. Whilst we are having these conversations about, the differences in race, and a lot of people still not united in that discussion. So how do we bring the example that you speak of, that happened during the lockdown? And whilst we are dealing about the overarching racial divide in this country and the unequal society that we are living in, and make sure that on a daily basis we bring these concepts of ubuntu, like you've just mentioned today, on a daily basis as South Africans. That's what I'm trying to find out from you. How do we start having those small pockets of success that we're seeing in terms of unity, being present in our daily life, and not just when there is a crisis?
But I'm going to try and be very brief and quickly give you two thoughts. The one thought I'd like to suggest, and in no way am I demeaning or not suggesting that the pain that the mother who lost her child in the Northwest must be feeling and the injustices she must feel. But maybe the thought is, as a result of that terrible, terrible tragedy, more and more people are integrating together, and the outcome, therefore, not for a second am I saying is worth it, but that there is at least some positive outcome. The second is, one of the initiatives that we're driving in our organization of Afrika Tikkun is we're moving into communities across South Africa with the intent of bringing community-based organizations to collaborate together amongst themselves and together with the private sector, so that everybody takes a sense of responsibility for developing young individuals, as we call it, from cradle all the way through to career, rather than just leaving it to pockets of individuals. Now, that type of nation building, that type of hand-holding, where we've had some experience, we're sharing our IP with other community organizations, for no other motive other than we believe that it is through unity that we will, in fact, bring about the kind of change that we want to see in the area of youth unemployment. So I wish I could say to you I've got all the answers. I haven't. Just in the small little world in which I operate, I've seen the benefits of collaboration between white and black, black and colored, etc., through all the racial groups. We've seen the benefit of negating xenophobic reactions and responses and building on all assets of people that come to our organization. There really is a situation where the sum of the parts becomes much greater than just the issue at hand. My suggestion is there is always another way. We don't have to, seek punishment in the sense of an eye for an eye. Biblical text might say that, but I think that the interpretation of that might also be there are different ways to pay back for the eye that was lost through community service.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Marc Lubner, CEO, Afrika Tikkun Group. Thank you so much.